Welcome to Capital Catch-Up, your look into the latest legislative actions and nominations in Congress. I am Victor.
And I am Linny. Today, we are diving deep into several key bills, appropriations packages, and committee actions. We will discuss what these measures mean and how they could impact communities across the country.
Let us start with a major environmental and land management package. House Resolution 9171 is the Department of the Interior, Environment, and Related Agencies Appropriations Act for fiscal year 2027. This bill outlines the budget to keep these crucial federal agencies running through September 30th, 2027.
That is right, Victor. Appropriations bills like this one are how Congress exercises its power of the purse, allocating specific taxpayer dollars to different agency programs. In this bill, we see significant funding going to the Bureau of Land Management for land administration and wild horse programs. The United States Fish and Wildlife Service would receive funds for endangered species conservation and wildlife grants. And the National Park Service would get funding for park maintenance and historic preservation.
It is a delicate balancing act. The legislation explicitly tries to balance resource utilization, such as mining and grazing operations, with environmental protection and the preservation of cultural heritage sites.
It really highlights the ongoing negotiation between economic activity on public lands and conservation. And speaking of public lands, we also have House Bill 618, the Apex Area Technical Corrections Act. This is what we call a technical corrections bill, which is used to clarify and update previously passed legislation without changing its core intent.
Exactly. This bill amends the Apex Project, Nevada Land Transfer and Authorization Act of 1989. It formally adds the City of North Las Vegas and the Apex Industrial Park Owners Association as authorized participants in land management and infrastructure projects. It also updates definitions, establishes permanent land withdrawal status for transferred parcels, and streamlines the sale of mineral materials from site development by exempting them from certain competitive bidding and quantity limits.
But it is important to note that the bill explicitly mandates that all future land transfers and rights of way must still comply with federal environmental standards, including the National Environmental Policy Act. So environmental oversight remains a priority, even as they streamline development.
Now, turning from land to chemicals, let us talk about House Resolution 8016, the Forever Chemical Regulation and Accountability Act of 2026. This is a very comprehensive federal framework aimed at phasing out non-essential perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances, which are commonly known as PFAS or forever chemicals.
These chemicals are called forever chemicals because they do not break down easily in the environment or the human body. Under House Resolution 8016, the Environmental Protection Agency would partner with the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine to scientifically define what constitutes an essential use of these chemicals. The bill also establishes a monitoring and reporting system for manufacturers and users and tasks them with identifying safer alternatives.
It goes even further by establishing centers of excellence for water source assessment and remediation. It also creates legal pathways for people to seek damages for chemical exposure and addresses bankruptcy protections for companies that produce these toxic substances. It is a major push for public health and corporate accountability.
Absolutely. And speaking of accountability, let us look at House Resolution 8312, the Fraud Prevention and Accountability Act. This bill is designed to protect federal financial integrity by establishing a permanent, government-wide Inspector General for fraud, accountability, and recovery.
Inspectors General are independent watchdogs within the government who audit and investigate agencies to prevent waste, fraud, and abuse. Under this bill, the President would appoint this new Inspector General, subject to Senate confirmation. Additionally, the Bureau of the Fiscal Service would operate a voluntary, centralized data sharing and analysis program to help federal, state, and local agencies identify fraudulent entities and prevent improper payments.
That kind of real-time data sharing could make a massive difference in how quickly the government can detect and stop financial mismanagement.
We also have another major funding bill to discuss, House Resolution 7147, the Homeland Security and Further Additional Continuing Appropriations Act, 2026. A Continuing Appropriations Act, or a continuing resolution, is a temporary funding measure that keeps agencies running when a full-year budget has not yet been passed.
This specific act provides essential funding for the Department of Homeland Security for the 2026 fiscal year, covering management, intelligence operations, and security enforcement. It includes strict transparency requirements, like mandatory reporting on acquisitions, pilot programs, and non-competitive contracts. It also funds body-worn cameras for enforcement agents through the Office of Inspector General.
But what is particularly interesting is that while it authorizes large budgets for agencies like United States Customs and Border Protection and the Transportation Security Administration, it explicitly zeroes out funding for certain border security operations. This shows how Congress can use targeted funding allocations to exert direct control over how an agency operates.
It is a very direct way to shape policy. Now let us shift to immigration oversight. House Resolution 6978, the Preserving Integrity in Immigration Benefits Act, focuses on auditing the immigration system. It mandates that the Director of United States Citizenship and Immigration Services conduct a comprehensive review of immigration benefit requests approved between January 20, 2021, and the date the bill is enacted, specifically those linked to Presidential Proclamation 10,998.
The goal is to verify that these approvals met all legal and security standards. The director would have to give an in-person briefing to the House and Senate Judiciary Committees and publish the formal results online by September 15, 2026.
That is a very tight timeline for a major audit. We are also seeing a focus on technology and infrastructure in House Resolution 9170, the Transportation, Housing and Urban Development and Related Agencies Appropriations Act, 2027. This bill funds administrative operations, cybersecurity and financial systems upgrades at the Department of Transportation. It also targets research and technology, including drone infrastructure and maritime logistics.
It also allocates national infrastructure investment grants, focusing on high-growth areas and historically disadvantaged communities. Plus, it funds the D.C. Safe and Beautiful program, which supports transit security and the rehabilitation of Union Station.
Let us talk about our nation's veterans. House Resolution 9152, known as the VETRA Act, proposes a 2-year pilot program within the Department of Veterans Affairs to modernize digital identity proofing and authentication.
This is aimed at replacing outdated verification methods with high-assurance, multi-factor digital systems. The goal is to make it easier and more secure for veterans to access benefits like disability claims, healthcare enrollment, and education benefits, while also reducing fraud. The Government Accountability Office would conduct an independent evaluation of the pilot's cost efficiency and accessibility before any full-scale rollout.
That sounds like a very practical upgrade for veterans trying to navigate the system. There are also several other newly introduced bills covering a wide range of topics. For instance, House Bill 9157 aims to reform the H-1B visa process.
And House Bill 9168 proposes amending the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to allow an income tax credit for qualified conservation contributions that include national scenic trails.
We also have House Bill 9140, which requires the Secretaries of Defense and Homeland Security to improve how military medics transition into the civilian healthcare workforce, and modifies employment assistance for separated service members.
There is also House Bill 9156, which would designate Tiananmen Square Memorial Boulevard in Washington, District of Columbia.
And House Bill 9139 seeks to amend Title 19 of the Social Security Act to clarify congressional intent regarding Medicaid financing policies, while House Bill 9146 aims to increase penalties for the sexual exploitation of children.
On the energy front, we have House Resolution 375, which supports designating May 2025 as Renewable Fuels Month. It highlights how renewable fuels support rural communities and lower consumer fuel prices. It also establishes the E15 Rural Domestic Energy Council to investigate E15 ethanol sales, refinery capacity, the renewable fuel standard, and regulatory barriers. The Council is on an accelerated timeline to submit proposed legislative solutions by February 15, 2026.
Finally, let us look at the executive and judicial branches. Anthony W. Mativi of Kansas has been nominated to be United States District Judge for the District of Kansas to fill the vacancy left by retired Judge Daniel D. Crabtree.
And on the committee side, the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry has scheduled a business meeting on June 8, 2026, to consider the nomination of Glenn Smith of Iowa to be Undersecretary of Agriculture for Rural Development.
So what should our listeners keep an eye on in the coming weeks, Victor?
Watch out for the upcoming Senate committee meeting on June 8, 2026, regarding Glenn Smith's nomination, the progress of the fiscal year 2027 appropriations bills, and the development of the E15 Rural Domestic Energy Council's legislative proposals as they head toward their early 2026 deadline.
That is all for this episode of Capital Catch-Up. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.
Goodbye.